Moving towards the like India and the other countries, especially, is India equipped for making use of the opportunity afforded to us by walking out to various companies from China and they are looking for some other destination? So, what is your take on that? What kind of opportunities that India can take?
Yeah, there's a lot of talk on this topic, right? And I
Yes.
think that the issue is about global supply chains and the organization that the flux and the organization that may be revisited by global corporations. So again, let's begin by understanding the problem a little bit, not the problem, but the trend. So global production is characterized by mostly multinational companies producing throughout the world. Of course,
Yes.
concentrations differ throughout the world, mostly driven by considerations of cost. Offshoring has been driven by cost considerations.
Yes.
What this has meant over the years is that supply chains have become overly reliant on a few global players, that is, a few economies.
Yes.
And this is a source of risk. It's a diversification risk, or better to call it lack of diversification risk.
Yes.
And I think companies have very, very quickly realized because of the pandemic that this risk is quite serious and can bring their businesses to a halt. So business strategies and boardroom strategies must now be focusing on how to diversify the supply chain risk, how to revisit global value chains, that is, sources of production and how global production is organized. And while they think about these changes, I think is an opportunity area. This is an opportunity area. This is a time to reposition and maybe reconfirm the suitability of certain economies over others. And the answer is not straightforward. We have always known what attracts multinational companies.
Yes.
We know there's the role of skills and labor cost. We know there's a role of legal and regulatory environment. It's highly important.
Yes.
We don't want to see a restrictive regime. We also know that foreign companies like investor protection. They are averse to risk. So there are many things that we know from literature and practical experience that matter to foreign companies, to multinational companies. Yes. And I think multinational companies is fascinating, is important, right? Because I also work in this area more closely.
Yes.
More than 20% of global production is accounted for by multinational companies. In magnitude, that's quite high.
Yes.
And over 70% of global trade is accounted for by multinational companies. So you can see that the current era of globalization in some ways is anchored on the operations and production of multinational companies. So you talked about opportunities for other countries, including India. So I think there's clear opportunity. And I think this opportunity builds on appetite which existed for some time now. We have seen a successive momentum of reforms in India, opening up of sectors, removing restrictions, doing business for foreign companies and domestic businesses simpler and faster. We have seen that momentum. Yes. But I think to be able to facilitate a rapid gain from the reorganization of supply chains, more thrust on the same areas is required. We need, again, as I mentioned earlier, systematic reform in this area as well. That is, removing sectoral constraints, removing some sectors that were not open, removing limits to investment in sectors, also expunging any limitations and restrictions related to product, technology use, give foreign companies an open business operational environment. And I think they're likely to choose that business environment over others. There's always a role of infrastructure. And I think some of the work that has happened in the area of improving facilities as special economic zones, both physical and governance facilities, I think they're important and more needs to be done. Because if you are to compete globally, one needs to have global plug and play infrastructure ready.
Yes.
And I think these are the thrust areas which could very quickly interlace with the need for large employment projects in India, because it serves two purposes. It generates employment in the shorter term, but at the
Yes.
same time enhances the value proposition of locating in India as supply chain and value chain decisions are being revised. So I think there's a great potential, and we can talk
Good.
about this.
Since like government of India has reduced the corporate income tax and doing like
Correct.
a lot of things in the past to ease of doing business ranking, so that has been resulted in the improvement of ranking since last 4 or 5 years to 63. So it's like aiming to top 50. If I ask you like what are the most important thing that India can improve upon, if one single point,
So
yeah.
right. So it's clear. I'll rely on data evidence
Yeah.
to give you an insight. Um, our unit at the World Bank recently concluded a global study based on a survey of foreign investors, existing foreign investors in 10 middle-income countries, which includes India, China, Vietnam, Turkey, Nigeria, others. And we find that in India, the three restrictions on top of investors' minds are obstacles in investment approvals, number one. Number two and number three, price restrictions, technology restrictions that are faced in by foreign firms, and limits to investment in sectors. So
Yes.
when
That can.
investment is capped, right? When investment is capped to a share or an absolute number, these
Yes.
things have come out from that direct survey evidence from India to matter the most for existing investors. Let me also add that this is across manufacturing and services. It is not just constraining a set of investors, but investors across the broad spectrum of sectors and industries.
Perfect, sir. Perfect. Indeed. And that's a beautiful solution that India can take. So I hope that the policymaker can listen to this and implement this.